Can you believe it? We are only a couple races away of finishing up the Kentucky Derby prep races for Kentucky Derby 151. And the next stop is one of my most favorite places to go. It's Keeneland, a 1.125 miles distance on the dirt for the Toyota Bluegrass. And this race awards 100 points, 100 points to the winner. And what that means is they have a guaranteed spot in the starting gate for Kentucky Derby 151. There are 7 horses in this race, and in many ways, they are equally matched. Are you ready to find your winner? Facts and figures are going to give you the winning edge. I give you the stats, you make the picks. Hi, it's Maura from Trifecta and a little bit extra, and we're going to go through the 7 runners, the stats, the facts, pros, cons, angles. I'm going to compare all 7 runners to one another. Now, this race is going to be held on Tuesday. It was delayed from Saturday due to the storms in the central U.S. And if you are in the central U.S. and were impacted by the storms, I just want you to know my thoughts and prayers have been with you. For this video, going through all 7 runners, remember, I am a podcast on YouTube Music. You could take me anywhere you want to go, or you could just slide to the horse you're most interested in. I have timestamps below. Now let's get started with some angles. Okay, so I studied the last 15 runnings of the Bluegrass, and here's what I found in terms of historical stats. Now this one surprised me. The back was the place to be. None were gate to wire, and 9 of the winners won from starting way in the back. And it didn't have to be a hot pace for them to win. So that's a very interesting stat and something we could pay attention to. Second up, if your last name is Brown or Pletcher, you may move to the front of the line. They have won 5 between them. Chad Brown has 3 and Todd Pletcher has 2. Now here's another one. Definitely look at this one. All but one had a graded stakes entry. So class is very important. And 6 came out of Florida, either the Tampa Bay Derby or the Fountain of Youth. Now, these are just historical angles and anything can happen, but they're important to monitor when we're looking at the stats of the runners. First up is River Thames, Todd Pletcher's horse, one of the angles. Now, he gets Irad Ortiz aboard this time. His regular jockey, Johnny Velasquez, had been riding over in Dubai, so Irad gets the mount. He leaves Owen Almighty, who's also in this race, to ride River Thames. 3 starts, 2 wins, 1 place, 3 starts, a lot of upside. His very first race was a $94,000 main race going 6 furlongs. Now in that race, he stalked the leaders. He took it to the 4-5 favorite, Vanderbilt. He got ahead of Vanderbilt. Now Vanderbilt fought back, but River Thames said, oh no, 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 had another gear, turned it on, and wins by 4 to 5 lengths. He follows it up with another dominant win, a mile, $96,000 allowance race. And there, he broke sharply from the gate. He presses the pace. And when they turn from home, boom, he is gone. He wins by 6.5 lengths. What was the strength of the field? Well, many of the horses, except for the second place finisher, improved. And so did River Thames. He goes into the Fountain of Youth, a key Kentucky Derby prep race out of Florida, one of the angles that we talked about, a 1.16 miles race. And in that race, it looked like River Thames was dancing his way to the winner's circle. But Sovereignty, he's shocked. He just comes by, boom, and gets the win. I think Johnny V was a little surprised that day, but it wasn't a bad win in defeat. He earned a 95 buyer. His buyers have all been in the 90s. And remember, he started as a 3-year-old. Now we have to ask ourselves, can he get the distance? Well, he's by McLean's Music. McLean's Music has given us Cloud Computing, who won the Preakness. He does have some sprinting progeny in him, but let's pay attention to Cloud Computing and hope that River Thames can get the 1.125 miles distance. Just to summarize, we got Todd Pletcher's horse. He's coming out of Florida. A lot of upside with only 3 starts. A 95 buyer, and the only loss was to a monster like Sovereignty. He's a true contender. The number 2 horse is Render Judgment. He's trained by Kenny McPeek, and Sheldon Russell, who was on board of him for his last race, the Virginia Derby, keeps him out. 6 starts, 1 win, 2 places, 1 show. This horse has a lot of experience and has been in 4 Kentucky Derby prep races. His best race was his last finish in the Virginia Derby. With Sheldon Russell aboard, he came in second. He begins his road to Kentucky Derby 151 in November at the G2 Kentucky Jockey Club, a 1.16 distance. And there he was off the pace and could only finish 5th, 8 lengths behind. Then he goes to the fairgrounds, to the Gun Runner, a 1.16 distance. He stumbled poorly at the start and could only manage 3rd, 9 lengths behind Built and Magnitude. Then he goes to the Risen Star, also at the fairgrounds, but a 1.125 distance. This horse has always needed the extra distance. He's by Blame, and Blame has won at the longer distances. Now, in that race, it was very disappointing. He only finished 8th, but Kenny McPeek said, throw that race out, because the horses that did very well that day were near the rail, and the outside was like quicksand. And where was Render Judgment? On the outside. Maybe he was right, because then he goes to the Virginia Derby, another 1.125 distance. This horse has run this distance 2 times, and in that race, breakthrough. He comes in second. Now, he also got blinkers that day, so blinkers may have made the difference. Now, his top buyer is only an 83, so that's a little questionable for me. But he has Late Kick, and we know Late Kick does well in the bluegrass. I'm kind of on the board on this horse. I really don't know what to do with him because he really needs to improve his speed, but he's got potential. Before we move on to the next horse, if you're finding this information useful, hit like, hit subscribe, drop me a comment. Never miss out on any of my racing coverage. Next up, we have the number 3 horse, Burnham Square. Trained by Ian Wilkes, he'll be ridden by new jockey Brian Hernandez Jr. Now, I don't know if this means anything, but usually we see Kenny McPeek and Brian Hernandez Jr. teaming up. And Kenny McPeek kept Sheldon Russell on the number 2 horse. Just something to take note of. Now, if you don't count the Fountain of Youth, this horse's last start, this horse is very consistent. 5 starts, 2 wins, 1 place, and 1 show. Always hits the board, except for the Fountain of Youth. His breakout race was in a $65,000 maiden race going 1.16 at the end of his 2-year-old career. And in that race, he drew the rail. He got right to the lead, never looked back, won by 9 lengths. His next race was a clear test. He's going into deeper waters. It's the Holy Bull, a Kentucky Derby prep race, a 1.16 distance at Gulfstream Park. There in a field of 7, he drew the outside post. He quickly gets to the rail to save ground. He takes aim at Tappan Street. Tappan Street is a $1 million colt by Into Mischief. When they go around the turn, he swings wide, boom, gets the lead, driving, and wins that race. I also want you to note, Tappan Street just won the Florida Derby at this distance. Now, Ian Wilkes says night and day difference between those 2 races and his earlier starts were the addition of the blinkers, and the results seem to back that up. Then he goes to the Fountain of Youth, another Kentucky Derby prep race at Gulfstream Park, another 1.16 distance. Now, I looked back all the way back to 1991 to see how many horses won both the Holy Bull and the Fountain of Youth, and I could only find 3. And Burnham Square was not one of them. He was the favorite that day, and like in the Holy Bull, he started off way in the back. He tried to make a big run, but he could only manage 4th. The other thing, though, he did top out his buyer at 91. Me personally, I would say throw the Fountain of Youth out. Like I said, only 3 horses all the way back to 1991 has been able to pull off that double. And his buyers of 90 and 91 in his last 2 races, including the Fountain of Youth, put him squarely in the mix here. Now, I know he's going against River Thames again, and River Thames has the better buyer and a lot of upside and a horse that I really, really like in this race. But if I look at who can go the longer distance and who has the better running style for this race, I think I have to give the nod to Burnham Square. So I told you that River Thames is by McLean's Music, and he did produce Cloud Computing, who won the Preakness, so potentially the distance is there. But McLean's Music also did produce some really good sprinters like Jackie's Warrior. This horse, Burnham Square, he's by Liam's Map, and Liam's Map did win at this distance. Also, 9 of the last 15 winners have come from the back, and Burnham Square has the late kick. I think both are very talented horses, and like I said at the beginning, this race has some great horses that are evenly matched up. The number 4 horse is Owen Almighty. He's trained by Brian Lynch and will be ridden by not Irad Ortiz Jr., who's been on him his last couple starts, but his brother, Jose Ortiz. Now, this horse is super consistent. 6 starts, 3 wins, 2 places. He burst on the scene, winning both of his first 2 races by 3 to 4 lengths. In his second race, it was the Ellis Park Juvenile going 7 furlongs, and he had that dominant win. Then he begins the road to the Kentucky Derby. He's in the very first Kentucky Derby prep race, the G3 Iroquois at Churchill Downs, stretching out to a mile distance. Now, he wasn't as forwardly placed as he likes to be. And there he finished with some gain, but he was second behind Jonathan's Way. And he earned a whopping 5 points that day towards the Kentucky Derby. His best race as a 3-year-old was the Pasco Stakes, going 7 furlongs. In that race, he dominated. He set blazing hot fractions and won that race until he didn't. He was disqualified and placed in 5th for interference. But on raw talent alone, the nod has to go to Owen Almighty. Then he goes to the Sam F. Davis, also at Tampa Bay, a 1 mile and 1/16 distance, and a Kentucky Derby prep race. And in that race, he and John Hancock, they linked up and they dueled all the way through the entire race, setting blazing hot fractions. And unfortunately, he comes in second, but just a neck behind John Hancock. Then comes the Tampa Bay Derby, a 1 mile and 1/16, also a Kentucky Derby prep race. And in that race, he went gate to wire, winner, 93 Beyer. Now, here's what I want you to pay attention to in that race. He didn't set blazing hot fractions. He dominated and controlled the pace, and he slowed it way down in the middle of that race. But at the end, he was speeding up and up and up and up. And that's important when you're going to look at, can they go the longer distance? Now, here's my opinion. Owen Almighty is not going to be able to control the pace in this race. I think he and River Thames and East Avenue are all going to go for the lead. They're either all going to go for the lead, or if you listen to their trainers, they're all going to try to avoid the lead, but they're all going to be in the lead. And if the pace heats up, it sets up really nicely for a horse with late kick like Chancer McPatrick or Burnham Square. Now, if you want to compare River Thames to Owen Almighty, I think for speed alone, you have to give the nod to River Thames. He has a higher Beyer and a lot more upside with only 3 races under his belt versus Owen Almighty. But if you compare who can get the longer distance, Owen Almighty just showed he could speed up even on his own at the end of a very long race. And he's by Speightstown, who gave us Charlatan and Olympiad, and they have won at this distance. The number 5 horse is East Avenue. Trained by Brendan Walsh, he'll be ridden by Luan Machado. 4 starts with 2 wins. Now, before the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, this horse was undefeated and untouchable. He began his career in a $71,000 maiden race at Ellis Park. He dominated that race and won by 8 lengths. Then he comes here to Keeneland for a big race, the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity. Again, pure domination. He stretched out to the 1 mile and 1/16. He went gate to wire and won by 5 lengths. He goes into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile race, and that race, an incredibly poor finish. He goes into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile as the dominant favorite, 9-5 favorite. Gates open, disaster. He stumbles so poorly, never gets into gear, and finishes 9th. Then he comes back for his 3-year-old season. We're all waiting to see what he could do. We all said, just throw that race out. He had an excuse. He goes into the Risen Star at the fairgrounds. And there, we thought he was coming back. He got all the way up to 2nd. But something happened, and he fades all the way back to 10th. Ouch. His races prior to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he was hitting 90 Beyers. His last 2 races, 74 and 75. So has East Avenue just hit a dead end? Well, He did have some really good workouts, and he is getting back to Keeneland, where he had that impressive performance in the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity. But for me, there are horses that are more consistent in this race. The number 6 horse is a horse that I'm really looking forward to seeing run back, and that is Chancer McPatrick. Trained by Chad Brown, he gets top jockey Flavien Prat in the irons. 5 starts, 3 wins, 1 place. Now, this horse was a top juvenile in 2024. In the G1 Hopeful, going 7 furlongs, trouble, he found it. He hits the gate. The jockey loses his left iron. He's way, way, way in the back, but somehow Monster Rally and wins. Then goes to the G1 Champagne, a mile at Aqueduct. He bobbles at the start. He's way in the back. He's got to go wide, but somehow finds the win. He goes into the top 2-year-old race, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, a mile and a 16th distance. And there, he only finishes 6th. Now, between that race and the Tampa Bay Derby, his 3-year-old debut, they discovered he had a flake in his ankle that had to be removed and a quarter crack in his left hind foot. And that means he didn't really begin workouts until January 26th. And Brown warned us going into the Tampa Bay Derby, he may only be 80%. In that race, he ran into Owen Almighty, who we already talked about, dominated going gate to wire. And Chancer McPatrick, he came in second with an 88 buyer. But he did have an excuse. I think this horse has a lot of heart, a lot of tenacity, and can get himself out of trouble. Also, he checked some of the boxes of angles for me. Chad Brown, check. Coming out of the Tampa Bay Derby, check, check. Graded stakes entries, lots of them with wins, check, check, check. And has the late kick. I mean, I think that's all the boxes for me. The question on everybody's mind is, can he get the distance? With the performance we saw in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and the performance in the Tampa Bay Derby, is he more of a miler? Well, he's a $725,000 purchase by McKenzie, and McKenzie did win the Whitney. He has to answer this himself in the Bluegrass on Tuesday. The number 7 horse is Admiral Dennis. Trained by Brad Cox, who seems to be on fire lately, he'll be ridden by Luis Saez, and together they have a 32% win rate. Now, this horse has 5 starts, 2 wins, 1 show. He took command of a $120,000 mile race in November and won by 3.5 lengths. Then he goes to the fairgrounds for the Gunrunner as the 4-5 favorite. He stumbled so poorly at the start. He finishes 4th, 16 lengths behind. Then in January, he drops in class to a $58,000 allowance race at the fairgrounds. Now, it was longer distance at a mile and a 16th. He was kind of green. He kind of flip-flopped his leads but got the win and his best buyer of an 82. Then he goes into one of the strongest Derby prep races that we've seen to date, the Rebel, a mile and a 16th at Oaklawn. He was off a bit slow. He tries to go wide, and the best he could do is 6th. Given the fact his best race was an allowance race and his speed is only an 82, for me personally, there are better runners in this race. Now it's your turn. Tell me, who do you like in the Bluegrass? Drop me a comment below. Hit like, hit subscribe. Never miss out on my racing coverage. It's not going to end with the Derby. We're going to the Belmont. We're going to the Preakness, and then on to Saratoga. I hope you find your winner for Tuesday, but most of all, sashay away with your money. Until next time, cheers.